The school hallway buzzed with laughter, chatter, and the occasional sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floors. Among the crowd, Barron Trump walked with his head slightly down, his tall frame making him stand out no matter how much he wished to blend in. He wasn't like the other kids. He never had been. It wasn't just because of his name. It wasn't even because of who his father was. It was something else, something that made him different in a way no one seemed to understand. And that difference made him a target. "Nice clothes, Barron. What thrift store did you get that from?" A voice rang out from behind him, dripping with sarcasm. A few chuckles followed, and Barron clenched his jaw. He had heard it all before. The teasing, the whispers, the judgmental stares, they had become part of his daily life. His clothes weren't flashy, and he didn't dress like the other rich kids in designer brands that screamed status. His style was simple, understated, comfortable, but to his classmates it was a reason to look down on him. "Come on, Barron. With all that money, you'd think you could afford something better," another voice chimed in. More laughter. More eyes on him. He could feel them watching, waiting for a reaction. But he wouldn't give them the satisfaction. He adjusted the strap of his backpack and kept walking. He had learned that silence was sometimes the best response. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that he had a secret. One that would change everything. And soon enough, they would find out. Barron kept walking, ignoring the laughter behind him, but the sting of their words lingered. He wasn't surprised. He had been dealing with this for months now. Whispers in the hallways, side glances in the cafeteria, and mocking smirks when he passed by. It was never outright cruel, just subtle enough that teachers wouldn't notice. But he noticed, every single time. It wasn't always this way. When he first arrived at the school, most of his classmates treated him like a curiosity. Some tried to befriend him, though he could tell it was more out of fascination than genuine interest. Others kept their distance, unsure of what to make of him. But as time went on, the novelty wore off, and the teasing started. At first, it was small comments, harmless jokes about how quiet he was or how different he seemed. Then, it escalated. His clothes became an easy target. Unlike his classmates who flaunted expensive brands and the latest trends, Barron's wardrobe was simple. Plain t-shirts, hoodies, and sneakers that didn't have flashy logos. He didn't care about fashion the way they did, but they assumed. His lack of designer labels meant something else. Some said he was weird. Others joked that maybe his family had cut him off. The rumors spread, twisting the truth in ways that didn't even make sense. But Barron never explained himself. He never defended his choices. He just kept his head down and focused on getting through each day. But today felt different. There was an edge to the laughter that hadn't been there before. A feeling in the air, like they were waiting for something bigger. At lunch, he sat alone at the far end of the cafeteria, as he always did. He didn't mind being alone. It gave him space to think. But today, a group of students gathered nearby, whispering to each other and stealing glances in his direction. Then, one of them, Jason, the loudest of the bunch, stood up and walked toward him. "Hey, Barron," Jason said, voice dripping with false friendliness. "We've been talking and we just don't get it. Why do you dress like that? You trying to prove a point or something?" Barron didn't answer. He took a bite of his food, acting like he hadn't heard. Jason smirked. "Come on, man. Don't be shy. We're just curious. I mean, your dad's a billionaire, right? So what's the deal? Did he forget to give you an allowance?" A few chuckles echoed from the table behind him. Barron's fingers tightened around his fork, but his expression remained neutral. He wouldn't let them get to him. Jason leaned in, lowering his voice. "Or maybe you don't dress rich because you don't want people to know who you really are." Barron finally looked up, locking eyes with Jason. There was a challenge in the other boy's gaze, a smirk that said he thought he had won. Barron's stare was calm, unreadable. He had spent years perfecting that look. Jason waited for a response, but Barron stayed silent. That only seemed to amuse him more. "All right, man. Keep your little secret. But don't be surprised when people start figuring things out." With that, Jason walked back to his table, and the conversation around him continued like nothing had happened. But Barron knew it wasn't over. Something was coming. He could feel it, and soon they would all know the truth. The days that followed were uneasy. Barron could sense the shift in the way his classmates looked at him, curious, suspicious, even a little excited. Something was building. The whispers were getting louder, the glances more obvious. It was as if they were waiting for something to happen. And then, it did. It started when someone snapped a picture of him in class, pretending to be on their phone, but clearly angling the camera toward him. The next day, another student did the same thing in the hallway. Barron didn't react. He knew better than to give them the satisfaction. But he could feel the tension rising like a storm just before it breaks. Then, one morning, he walked into school and immediately felt the shift. The usual side conversations stopped when he passed. People weren't just whispering anymore. They were staring. Some had their phones out, scrolling through something. Others just looked at him, waiting for a reaction. Jason was the first to speak. He stepped in front of Barron's locker, phone in hand, grinning. "Well, well. Looks like everyone finally knows your little secret," he said, loud enough for half the hallway to hear. Barron glanced at him but didn't respond. Jason turned his phone around, showing a picture of Barron, not from school, but from somewhere else. The image was slightly grainy, but the setting was unmistakable. It was a homeless shelter. Barron was in the background, dressed exactly as he always was, simple, unbranded clothes. But he wasn't just there. He was working, carrying boxes, handing out meals, talking to people like he knew them. The caption beneath the photo read, "Barron Trump's real life." The post had gone viral overnight. Jason's smirk widened. "So what's the deal? You hiding out there or something? Trying to live a double life?" The laughter that followed wasn't cruel this time. It wasn't even mocking. It was nervous, confused, like no one quite knew how to react. Barron finally spoke, his voice calm. "I volunteer there." Jason blinked, clearly thrown off. "What?" Barron looked around at the crowd forming. "Every weekend, every holiday, whenever I have time." He shrugged. "Has nothing to do with my dad. Has nothing to do with money. It's just something I do." The hallway was silent. The energy had shifted. The teasing, the whispers. It all suddenly felt small, meaningless in the face of what they had just learned. Jason looked like he wanted to say something else, but nothing came out. For the first time, he seemed unsure of himself. One of the other students spoke up, softer this time. "Why?" Barron met their gaze. "Because I want to. Because I can." And with that, he turned, shutting his locker and walking down the hallway like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. For the first time, the stares weren't filled with judgment or amusement. They were thoughtful, curious, even a little ashamed. By lunchtime, the whispers had stopped. The viral post had taken on a different tone. Instead of mocking, the comments were filled with surprise, respect, even admiration. Some of the same classmates who had laughed at him in the past now looked at him differently. Some even approached him, awkwardly trying to make conversation. Jason didn't say another word. Neither did the others who had started it all. Because in the end, Barron didn't need to explain himself. He had already shown them exactly who he was.